Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode here on Sunday. The title is World of Enchantment with Catherine Edwards. Of course, you can find her work at Catherine Edwards here on YouTube and also on her website at CatherineEdwardsAcademy.com. Let's give her a big warm welcome back to the show, Catherine. Welcome back.
Hello. God, what a week it's been, hasn't it, already?
It's been a hell of a week, Catherine, and I think it's going to be an even bigger week coming up next week. Oh my God. So thank you for joining me here on my website. I said welcome back, but actually it's your first time here on my show. I've been on your show a couple of times. So thank you for accepting this invitation. And thank you to the audience for joining us here today on this live interactive show. We'll be taking your questions and comments as we go. And just as a quick note, also, we are now, Catherine and I were just testing this before the show. We are simulcasting also now on Catherine's YouTube channel. So if you're watching this there for the first time, do please come and check me out here at Beyond Mystic 3, our third backup channel here on YouTube, and hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you're watching here and you don't know who Catherine is yet, please do go and subscribe here to Catherine Edwards' YouTube channel. Lots of amazing content and absolutely more to come there as well. Okay, so hello everyone. Catherine, okay, so yes, it's been a hell of a week. You and I were just chatting here before the show. We're feeling a little bit antsy. Your animals are feeling a little bit antsy. Why don't we get into that? Because I'm sure a lot of the audience here are feeling the same way.
I think so many people are. I mean, I've had so many people contact me this week saying exactly the same. And it's sort of a roller coaster of emotions. And of course, we've got the Lionsgate portal today as well, haven't we? So so many simultaneous sort of energy shifts coming in, and I think we're all feeling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about your animals. What's going on with your animals, or what are you seeing differently here maybe this week?
Well, it's been really interesting. I mean, I've got dogs, cats, horses, guinea pigs, and some of my animals have been acting quite strange this week in terms of they've been all staying a lot closer, not going so far afield. And one of my cats has been very kindly keeping awake all night, every night. She's been sort of needing quite a lot of attention at night. And when she sort of comes and lies directly on my chest, I always know something's coming because she's not the most affectionate ones of all our cats. So the fact that she's been doing this sort of every night for the last 5 or 6 nights is actually quite unusual. And I'd say what I've really noticed about most of the animals, but in particular the cats, is they've all been staying a lot closer and they've all been congregating, so not wanting to go so far afield, which is definitely a change. And they're such a good indicator, aren't they? I mean, what about your dog? Has your dog been doing anything this week?
Oh, absolutely. She is basically walking in my shoes. Everywhere I go, it's like right there in my heels. I'm like, okay, Gemma, give me some room. I'm working out. I don't want to drop a barbell on you or anything, Yeah, she's very close also. It's funny you mentioned that. And I'm curious to you folks watching the show here in the audience too. Are you experiencing the same thing with your cat, with your dog, with your animals? If so, let us know. Put it into the chat and let's share this conversation with everyone. What's interesting, what you're just saying here too, let me bring up this slide. This is a show I produced yesterday with Cliff High. The name of the episode is, I won't read the red part because it might get us into trouble here with some of the algos, but it's Beyond Alta and then the red part. And so, folks, if you're not familiar with Cliff High, I think Catherine and I touched upon this on the last show, but he does predictive linguistics, and he's been at this for 20-some years now. He's got this model where he basically scrapes the internet for all of our emotional language and basically can make forecasts from that. And what he's saying also is this, and this last week here and moving into next week, we're hitting this huge emotional tension period. So we're all feeling it, whether that's coming from what maybe people in the field are calling the dread machine or that fear machine that's being pumped out by mainstream news, or whether it's also coming from space with these weird energies we've seen in the last couple of days too, the Schumann resonance go off the chart. So we're all feeling that jitteriness, like something's about to happen. And so for most of us who are tuned into that, we feel that. But what he was saying in that episode is that unfortunately, some of the people who have been inoculated don't feel that as much right now. They seem to have been disconnected from those senses. And perhaps that was one of the goals. There was many goals to this inoculation without getting into that here. So I'm curious, what do you think about that, Catherine? There was this famous quote, and I forget who, Rudolf Steiner, who said, eventually man will inoculate himself against his own soul. Is that where we're going with all of this thing? Where do you think we're at? Let's paint a picture for the audience.
Well, first of all, I listened to the Beyond Alka episode with Cliff Hyde twice today, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I shared it on my Telegram and with lots of people. So if anyone hasn't listened to that, it's an absolute must. And I really think that is part of the agenda, because when you disconnect any being from their soul, they're so easy to control. And also they accept completely different things in their life. And I think that's part of the agenda. I mean, how much I'm seeing it happening, I don't know. I'm not interacting that much with people that have taken that decision, more through circumstances and having a really busy time of it rather than deliberate choice. But what I am finding is the divide is huge, and I am wondering how much that is reality. Lots of my friends have been saying that they have been noticing that, but it's really hard, isn't it? Because once you've put that thought in people's minds, are you looking for something that's not really there or not? So I've been trying to look at people that have taken that decision with a very open mind and just take everything at face value.
Right.
But we're on such different wavelengths anyway. And I don't think I've never experienced anything in my life before where people's consciousnesses have been so divided. Yeah. And it's actually quite difficult to, however much you want to, keep friends with people, keep family on board, there's not a lot to talk about when you've got such major things happening in the world, and one lot of you on that side of the fence and one on that side of the fence. It's really, right. Unless you're going to go into trivia, what do you talk about? But there's so much happening with the push now for this. Surely to goodness, people are going to start questioning that.
We're seeing that more and more. And of course, I can show a lot of slides. And just yesterday, I think Janine posted on her Twitter as well. There was this huge protest in Paris.
Yeah.
So we could just see that across the world right now. So people are waking up. And of course, as you just alluded to that in that show yesterday, we did talk about some of the good guys behind the scene. Yeah. And of course, you, Janine, a lot of speakers have been talking about that. And for the longest time, people kind of looked at us and said, oh, you guys are just like pie in the sky. You're just selling opium. And here what we're saying is, no, actually, there is some good guys in the back running around, not just here terrestrially, but also maybe from off-world. So that's a whole other conversation right there. But the point being is that what he's seeing in his predictive linguistics is that these good guys, whoever you want to, or however you want to address them, are at some point here in the very near future going to make themselves known. So we are now going to be faced with, okay, not only is there a war going on, this is a spiritual war, but there are good guys who are working on our behalf, but they were doing so surreptitiously, maybe behind cloak and daggers type of methods, because they needed to be doing it that way until maybe now. So we're at that tipping point now where these good guys also need to recruit the rest of us here, the patriots who, believe in law and order, who believe in free speech, who believe in our personal choices when it comes to the health and safety of ourselves and our children, all of these things. And so now we're at that point. So it'll be very fascinating to see here in the next couple of days how that good guy scenario plays out, or how they come about to being. And what Cliff was saying is, like, there's two possibilities. One, they could just come on and say, hey, we've been here for a number of years fighting this, and we're at this stage here now, and we need your help. And here now we have a coordinated effort against these, whatever you want to call them, the enemy class. We'll just say that here for this show. And at that point, the rest of the normies might wake up to say, oh, actually, okay, there is a problem and we need to be on board. For the people like you and I and the people watching this show, finally we'll have a little bit of direction, because you and I have been sussing this out. We're not in the club. We haven't been initiating, and we're trying to figure out what's happening. You almost have to be initiated to know what's going on. And so it's been very difficult for us to be in unison, to work together, even though that is our goal. We're all trying to help humanity. So now hopefully we can maybe cross that bridge where we're all working together, not just us here in the Truther movement, but also the self-organizing collective that has been fighting this enemy class. What would you say to that? And how would you say that into your own words here to explain to your audience how we are at that tipping point right now, Catherine?
I think it's absolutely vital now something comes out, but I can honestly see why there's been a delay. So we've been at this for a year and a half now, and I'm particularly impatient. I'm like, come on, get on with it. But the longer it goes on, I really understand why they've had to wait, because one, the scale of the job that they've been dealing with has been so huge, but also the cognitive dissonance of the vast majority of people. I've been absolutely amazed how many people just do not want to have a conversation with it about these issues at all. And I'm not necessarily talking about some of the really dark and deep things that I won't mention the words of now. But people, I think there's this saying about, if you bury your head in the sand, then you can hope that everything's just going to pass you by. And I've seen that as such a survival strategy, really, for so many people. If they don't enter into the conversation, they haven't got to deal with what might be happening. And I think the fact that they won't enter into the conversation shows that deep down at some sort of level, they really do know something's up, but it's too much for them to cope with.
Right.
But I think that now's the time where we really have got to have some direction from above. But the one thing that really gives me hope is, if you take this situation in America, the vast majority of people that we think have voted for you know who, that means that when something comes out, if we're just talking about America at the moment, there should actually be a huge percentage of the population that would be on board. And that's what's been confusing me a bit about the delay and the timelines, is we all know what really happened in that important vote. And yet why then are they so nervous about making this announcement? Because really, if you know you've got that many people that voted that way, surely to goodness, you should be quite confident that there's a lot of support there, even if you're not seeing it publicly. It's a strange one, isn't it?
It's very strange, but I'll offer maybe two reasons, and I'm not sure which one I would weigh heavier. One is, even though maybe a majority of the population would be on board, there's still a percentage of that population who could very well go absolutely ballistic if this news was not delivered to them in a timely fashion, in a way for them to come to their senses and realize the full extent of the reality and all that. And I think that that percentage, even though it could be small, it could still be very detrimental to the rest of the population if, for example, they decided to go and use violence. And of course, here on the show, we don't condemn any use of violence whatsoever. So that is one concern. A second concern attached to that concern is, if those people do go and react violently, that will also play in the hands of the enemy class, because the enemy class could then say, oh, look, we need more police on the street, we need more UN soldiers, we need more this, we need more controls, we need more this, and therefore we would be playing in their hands. So there's that. I agree with you. And then I think it comes to a point of capturing in some way the mainstream media. If that doesn't happen, even though maybe a large percent of us knows, we don't really know yet, because we are still being mind controlled by our mainstream media. And still there's a lot of people out there saying and believing that if they didn't see it on CNN on 6 o'clock, it's not because Jean-Claude or Catherine are saying it. If it's not on CNN on 6 o'clock, it's not true, Jean-Claude, right? So at some point, there has to be a flipping there of the narrative. And that will only happen once the mainstream media is either recaptured or directed or forced to say the truth. I'm not sure how to explain it. So I see those scenarios. And again, I'm with you on that too. I'm frustrated. I've been doing these shows for a year. Like, come on with it already. You guys have known this since the beginning. But then again, there is that fear of this going into a kinetic war and maybe more lives being lost or more blood being shed. And of course, we don't want that. So yes, there's been delays. And on that point too, my conversation with Cliff, we talked about some of these goalposts, and people keep telling us, "Oh, you keep moving the goalposts. It was in January, then it was in the 1st of April, 107 said, and now here we are, we're in August, and you're still moving the goalposts to September." What it is, and what Cliff was saying is like, yeah, but everybody who was talking about those goalposts were nobodies, in the sense that they were not official. They're not the self-organizing collective of the good guys running the show behind the show. They could not tell you, even if they wanted to tell you, when that goalpost would be, when that famous return would happen, because this is an active undercover war, and every time the enemy does something, we have to react, and then they react to what we reacted, and then it keeps moving everything. And of course, we're on top of that. This is a woo-woo show. We're in competing timelines, so to make matters even more complicated. Right. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, the competing timelines is a really interesting one, because I am very much a believer that the power of consciousness can shift which timeline we're in, and also how quickly these things happen. I mean, I've seen it happen on numerous occasions in my own life, but it's such an interesting one. I think the tipping point is such an important way of describing it, because like everything, there becomes this point where if you delay it too long, you can't rush in to doing things too quickly, because we've seen by what's happened, you know, we think, it's difficult to choose our words, but we think that a lot of what's happened over the last year was rushed out on the dark side and their hand was forced, and that's why they're making so many mistakes. But equally, I think your description with Cliff yesterday was really, really good about why, I'm just going to call him the Orange Man, might have made certain decisions and been pushing certain things. And you can only let that go so far without having devastating consequences, unless they've got something surprising in the background that's going to relieve some of that pressure. And I would hope and believe that they have, because you know, you've got the issue of the placebo and the nocebo effect. And if you suddenly come out and tell people what's really been happening, you really are going to have mass panic.
Yeah.
So it's such a delicate balance. And we've also got to remember that this has been planned for so many years. You know, we've seen the result of it over the last year and a half. But of course, this is decades and decades of, in fact, over a century, as I understand it, in the planning. And it has been that tick for tack in terms of, you react like this, I will react like that. It's a really hard one. I'm just very pleased I'm not making the decisions, but I do feel that we've got to have some sort of disclosure soon, because it's almost now reached the stage with the stage they're at of the fear mongering and what we're seeing rolling out of the passes, I'll just call them, in loads of countries, which has just gone off the scale over the last couple of weeks. I'm completely shocked. You don't need that to come into fruition to scare enough people to make that decision. So I think now we're at a very, very important point, hence thinking something's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Because if they don't do something quickly, it's almost going to be too late for a lot of people. And that's not going to help their cause when the great disclosure comes. So for me, one of the main reasons, as well as energetically, why I really feel the moment is now, because we've seen this situation escalate so dramatically over the last couple of the weeks. Right. We've also seen the huge naval operation across the globe, and we know very well that what happens is they do these training exercises and then they can suddenly tip into the real thing, because that's been a consistent pattern over the last few decades as well. So all of that points to the fact, to me, that there's something really just about to happen. Yes, right. That's the one I was looking at.
Right, exactly. And I concur with you too. I mean, To the extent that I know what I know, but I know that I don't know a lot. And see, that's the thing too. You and I can sit here and how do you say that? Backseat quarterback a play or backseat drive the situation, but we still don't have all the facts, and we have not been initiated, in essence, into this occulted war. We have deciphered a few pieces with our intuition, with our research, with our paranoia in some cases, but we still don't have all the pieces. And so it's very difficult to say, hey, we should go now, we should not go now. But I agree with you. I'm also afraid, because ultimately here, what we're looking for is to save as many lives as possible. And what we're seeing being rolled out, and the fear factor, as you said now, it is very possible that there's still going to be big numbers. I mean, we've seen that in past world wars, that these are casualties of war. And it's not because the good guys are not doing their job. It's simply because we're fighting this enemy class, which is absolutely ruthless. And I mean, if you look at those Georgia Guidestones, they were telling you years ago that they were going to do this. They wanted to reduce the population of the planet to 500 million. And so if we are able to thwart that in a very small number, even though it's a large number of people are casualties, it's still a good thing. But I agree with you. There are going to be casualties here, and we're all hoping for the same thing. So, man.
I do think there's also a lot going on in the background that we're not aware of in terms of measures to counteract what's happened. I really do think that. I mean, we've heard about so many healing technologies. We know so many healing technologies have been suppressed. And we also know that they've been trying to kill us off for years, with pollution in the air, the water, the food, every possible way, they can think of. And we're very resilient. In fact, nature's very resilient in general.
Right.
So in that respect, I think it just must be, I mean, I'm so pleased I'm not part of that planning, because it is such a decision to make. But I do think that what they've managed to achieve in the last 4 years, and to turn it around so much, gives me a lot of confidence in terms of what we're seeing moving forward.
Well, to put it in the conversation perspective I had with Cliff High yesterday, he said, okay, I'm just trying to watch my words here. So we're on a different timeline now, because a character messed up the plans 4 years ago or 5 years ago now, right? So let's just say it that way. Had that not happened, the plan at that point would have been already to be in a kinetic war, maybe some nukes going off in the country in a couple of places, and displacement of population, much more casualties, and already a balkanized version of the United States with all of these UN troops running the show. So we've avoided that already. So in a sense, okay, but for people who don't know this and who are not yet initiated to that, they're not looking at that as a positive. All they're looking at is the people who are perhaps being casualties of war now from the accidents of what's going on now, and they're saying, oh my God, that's horrible. And to them I would say, yes, I agree, if you are only looking in that perspective. But if you're seeing the bigger picture and what's already been averted, and what might be still averted here moving forward by the moves of this occulted good guy contingency, that self-organizing collective. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come out in the open too, because I mean, as a fighter of the truth, like you, like me, like many others here, we've had it pretty rough. You've had your YouTube channel, I've had mine, the channel deleted, I have had my Patreon deleted, all of this because we're trying to share the truth. And then every time, this is what's funny, I remember one of my first strikes was on the Hunter Biden laptop thing, and of course that was conspiracy theory. I got a strike for that. I'm like, okay, well, now the FBI admitted they had it, so it's no longer conspiracy, but they hadn't removed my strike or compensated me for the loss of revenue. And on that note, hey, somebody sent you a super sticker. I don't see those anymore because I'm still demonetized here on YouTube, but whoever that was earlier, I had it on the screen. Thank you so much. And yes, you can still tip through this episode to Catherine. It goes to her channel directly. So thank you for those super chats. If you're watching on Catherine's show, on mine, of course, you don't have access to that. Google doesn't like me at that, YouTube doesn't like me at that level anymore. So what was I saying? Going back to Yeah, we've been put through the rigmarole here, and having the idea of being able to coalesce with a bigger force, and that being out in the open will be so refreshing for a lot of us here, because we felt that we were alone fighting this fight on the front yard, and we're like, where are all the people with the actual money and the guns and the bullets and the planes? Like, it's just little old Catherine and me here on the front lines. Where's everybody else, right? So hopefully that comes to pass, and I'm encouraged that we're getting close to that moment. What do you feel on that?
I really do think we are. And I think, that there had to be something that happened to change behavior. Because if you look at what we've been doing as a human race, the sad reality is we have become very selfish and self-absorbed. And, I've worked with animals. I've been working for animals for years. And when you see the sort of cognitive dissonance of the way that most people treat animals, most people have got no idea where their food comes from. Anyone who's even got pet animals or animals in their care, even if it's livestock, we're responsible for making every decision for them. And how seriously do most of us take that responsibility? And over the last year, we've seen all our liberties being taken away from us, and people that we don't trust making decisions for us. And for me, I'm just almost been like, hallelujah, because we're now seeing if we treat other species on the planet like this, karma comes back and teaches us a lesson that the planet survives, the world survives on balance and respect, and never taking more than what you need. And that's the way the nature thrives. And unfortunately, we had got to a stage where we did need a good reset, not the type of reset they wanted. But I think for me, it's gone on long enough that a lot of people are really looking at their lives in a different way, and are really looking at what's important to them, what friendships, what they want to do. I mean, just this week, I've had at least 100 people emailing me, telling me that they've left their jobs because they're not going to be forced into a decision. And that is amazing. Absolutely. And this is people from all walks of life. A lot of people with families to support. So it's not the people that have got an easy choice in it. And I'm absolutely blown away by how much a lot of people are doing on that day-to-day level, and they are saying no. So I think the trouble is human nature. We know that most people don't change their lifestyle until they get seriously ill or something tragic happens to them. Unfortunately, it's a reality. Right. And I think sometimes you do need something to really pull the rug out from under your feet to make lasting changes. And I think what we're seeing now and what we're about to see, I don't think any of us can go back. We're certainly not, we don't want their new normal, but we do want to recreate. We talk about moving in to the age of Aquarius. So what does that mean to us on a daily basis? How are we going to live our lives? How are we going to think, act, behave with not just each other as humans, but with everything on the planet moving forward?
Oh, I'm totally with you on that. And let's switch gears here to talk about this video that I watched a little while back here from Alison Coe. Now, she does quantum healing, hypnosis therapy, QHHT, and with the permission of her clients, she records the sessions and brings back, basically for her YouTube channel here, the messages that her clients received during the session, whether those were from their guides, ancestors, or extraterrestrials. In this particular show, let me bring down the link for the audience to go and watch this. And this is going to strike a whole conversation for us here. So first of all, I won't play the clip. I don't have her permission to do so, and I want to respect her copyright here. But please, guys, do go and check out this episode. The link is now in the live chat for you guys, and I'll also put it in the description box below here after the show. Now, what Alison brought back from this particular session was that this individual she was working with, so let me just set the stage for this to make sense here. I'll take a little bit of time, so bear with me here. So the individual goes there for a QHHT. He's a very much awake individual, a very much, in some cases, angry individual because he's awake and because he sees things not moving the way he wants to, and he's frustrated. And so he goes to this QHHT session, and only to realize that, okay, the reason you're having all of these trouble is you're out of sync with the population you're living with. And the reason you're out of sync with them is that because you came in here with a specific mission and you're holding a higher light frequency. Your job is not yet here, basically was the message he was getting. So just hold on, be patient. And so what he's being told by these extraterrestrials through this session is that he's here to hold the light during the transition so that he can hit the ground running and the people around him can hit the ground running after that to create that new earth. And so that's creating a huge stress on him because he's 30, 40 years old. He's got kids, a regular job and all of this. And he's been waiting all his life to become active for like a lot of us. And when I listen to that, I'm like, oh my God, she's talking to a lot of us right now. We're in that exact situation where we're just frustrated. In some cases, we can't handle it. We lose our tops. We're like, this planet doesn't make any sense. And yet we see a bunch of zombies everywhere saying, oh yeah, okay. So what do you make of this show? That's my first question. And then I'll get into some other messages from the ETs in that particular conversation, which is absolutely fascinating. But what do you make of that? The idea of these souls that came in here on a specific message and who are on a specific mission, but that are very, very long in the tooth right now, ready to just call it quits because they can't take it any longer. What would you say to those people?
That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, I see this a lot with the animals that come into our lives. So the animals that come into our lives are always here to teach or help the owners through something, the owners, the parents. And there's often so much synergy between what's going on with the animal and the owner. And what you've just described there is quite incredible because it's one of the things that we do a lot of the humans is we're always planning ahead. We're often living in the future or in the past. And one of the things that we talk about moving forward towards 5D is about being much more in the present moment and just being. And animals do this a lot more. And I think it's very, very difficult when people come with that mission because we as a human race are always in a rush. But perhaps it's fantastic that he found this person that could give him that message, because now, hopefully, once you've received that message and realize that the timing is absolutely everything for all of this. And sometimes we rush into things. It's what we started off with show with, really. If they'd have rushed into things earlier, we can now, in hindsight, even just a year later, I can see, oh my God, if they've done that back in November, if they'd have done that in January, it wouldn't have achieved everything. And I think one of our biggest lessons as humans is we're very good at telling people on the spiritual side of things that you're exactly where you're meant to be, but we don't often take that on board. We
don't take our own advice. Yes.
Yeah, it's easy to say these things, but to live by it and to think, there are no such things as coincidences. I'm meant to be experiencing this now. And what I'm meant to be doing is enjoying the journey and getting the most out of the journey. Because remember a couple of shows back when you were on my channel, we talked about your snorkeling and about how you've got to slow down to really see what's there. That's almost what I feel like we're in now, in terms of to stop the normal human behavior of rushing ahead and wanting to sort everything out. I mean, I've done a lot of my corporate career of project planning and risk management. And so I always want to jump ahead and negate the risks and sort of plan what might be coming. But we can't work like that in the new times. We've got to really tune in with our intuition and really take our own advice and sort of believe we are exactly where we're meant to be. And if we can accept that, I really think the energy will be calm enough for us to really hear the messages that we really need to hear at this time. Because you spoke about a very interesting thing, which I loved with Cliff, about the observational dilemma. And I think that ties into what you've just said. I think that actually there's so much advice coming from everyone from so many different sides that if you're rushing through life and constantly trying to achieve your purpose or whatever it might be, you're going to miss all the messages that you needed to fulfill that destiny.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So I apologize. I'm not sure how that phone rang on my computer, but at any rate, I thought it was off. So I apologize for that. And hopefully the person doesn't call again because I don't know how to shut it off. Okay.
Invasion.
Right. Okay, maybe to make me lose my point, but I won't lose my train of thought here. So first, here's a picture. This is me taking a picture of somebody else taking a picture of me on this amazing shipwreck dive a couple years ago. And yes, you're absolutely right. We need to slow down and pay attention. I use macro lens photography underwater to capture in a 10 square foot area hours and hours of footage and thousands of species. It's all there. Whereas most divers, when they're so excited, they're like rushing towards the course. I'm like, whoa, just slow down. You missed everything. And I could show you a gazillion more pictures here, but the point is to be in the now. And so let me bring up this book here, The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. If you haven't read this, go read this book, folks. And if you read it, maybe read it again, because we often, when you read it, it's so like, oh yeah, it's so simple, and use those frequencies to stay in that moment. But then life intrudes, drama intrudes, and work intrudes, and then you kind of forget. So if you read this already, maybe go back and read it, because right now it's very important. Okay, let's go back to Alice and Co. So one of the messages from the ET, and Catherine, you're absolutely prescient on this, was that he needed to be, so the ETs here were talking to Allison to say to her client, he needs to be in the moment. He needs to find joy right now with his kids, with his wife. That's what he's supposed to do right now, to hold that light. That's it. That's it. The rest will come once we go over this event. Those were the words that she was using and that the ETs were using, the event. Now, we've heard many people in this realm talk about the event, when it's going to be, what it's going to look like. And at this point, nobody really knows, but we know something is up, right? We're all feeling it right now. And so let's get to the second part of that reading. She talked about, or the ETs talked about, at the very near future here, a release of information that would let us know that indeed we're not alone. Now, as you know, you and I have talked about this 180-day countdown to disclosure that was submitted by the Pentagon last December. It came out to June. The report was blah, blah, blah. As all the crypto remote viewers told me, there's like, yeah, there won't be anything in it. And really, there wasn't. But apparently now we're on that cusp, maybe for August, early September, for really seeing something at that level. And it's funny, she mentioned that in that reading, getting the message from the ETs. And Cliff is also getting that same message. We talked about this yesterday. He didn't say necessarily it would come from the ETs, but he talked about how some of the tactics here from the good guys, so here on planet, maybe some rogue generals would use some of this information to maybe help on the health situation, as you just described, or to reboot our society with these new technologies that would really unshackle us from this debt slavery system that we're in. So we're getting that messages from both sides. So let's go back to Allison here. What she said also was that at this event, the energies would be so strong. So one, we would hear about the ETs, and that we would know when that happens that we're very, very close to the event. And then once that knowledge would come up, we would be facing huge energies hitting the planet, and a lot of people would have trouble with the energy. So let me bring back up here the Schumann resonance. We've been talking about this and tracking this for a while. This is nothing compared to what I understand she is being talking about here. So if that is the case, those ETs said that they would have ships here to take some of the people off the planet for who their body cannot adjust to this frequency yet. And then people like her client would be here to start rebuilding, reacclimatizing, holding that frequency, holding that light towards that new earth we want to create. And then those people would return here. That's a fascinating story, but I've heard things like that before from other clients as well. So what's your take on the event, the knowledge of there being extraterrestrials, us not being alone here in the very near future, and then this idea of maybe having some intervention where people would be moved out of harm's way, at least maybe temporarily, and then return to Earth? That's a big combo. Maybe a whole other show.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I've never personally, to my knowledge, seen an extraterrestrial. However, I think it's incredible that people could think that they don't exist and they're not around us. So I'm sure they're around us, and I'm sure we are seeing a lot of them on a day-to-day basis, and perhaps that we're not aware of it. Obviously, there's some that are you know, sort of, let's use the word good, the label good for them, and some that are not so good. And we know that some of the decisions that have been made from some of the people on the dark side that we don't approve of are probably very influenced by that direction as well. I think it's really time. I think it's really important, because if this does come and it's done by the right way, then it will introduce a lot of these technologies that are going to deal with some of the problems that we've spoken about. So, I mean, I love Joe Dispenza, and I've seen numerous examples of people healing themselves, numerous examples of people. I've seen numerous examples of normal people healing other people and healing animals, etc. And we know the power of mind over matter. So if we can have something that's introduced that makes a lot of people believe that they will be cured, they will be healed, it doesn't really matter where that comes from. And I think it's going to have to be a quantum change. It can't be just a slight improvement on what we've seen, because that's just not going to wash it for people. Right. But I do think the shock is going to be huge. And I love the idea that some people are taken off planet and to keep them safe and then come back again, because that would just be a beautiful thing. And I wonder whether it's just going to be people, or whether the animal life will just accept it.
I think probably the animals would adapt faster than us. In my last show with Solreda, she talked about, you know, how animals shake it off when they're stressed, right? Humans don't do that. We don't have that innate pattern or tactic, I guess, to deal with stress. We have to think about it. Oh, shoot, I have to go meditate, right? So it's not as automatic as it is for animals. And of course, animals are much, much more closer to the planet than we are. We've forgotten our link to the planet compared to most animals. So that's one thing. Now, to your point, though, Teresa is saying on the chat here, is that removal what they call the rapture? Well, potentially. I'm not sure. Again, we've been told so many lies at every level that it's really hard to discern. But that said, like Catherine, I like the idea of having an escape valve for people who right now couldn't handle the energy. And I say an escape valve because I think that's the way Alison Coe and the session went. It wasn't a full-time thing. And, you know, a lot of people in this space have been talking about this separation between 3D and 5D. And then some people would move to 5D. And then what happens to everybody in 3D? What, they all die? We all miss them? Or what happens? And I never liked that scenario, because I thought, hey, we're all in this together. We should all be able to graduate. So maybe what the ETs speaking to Alison Coe here were talking about is that, in fact, that an escape valve, a temporarily readjustment for those people, and then they would come back and join us. I think it was Janine who said to everybody, no, everybody's coming along. Don't worry, everybody's coming. I think it was her, or it could have been somebody else. At any rate, that makes sense in that scenario.
It does make sense. And I think, you know, everyone's got different coping mechanisms. You've got a biological to physiological level, you've got the flight or flight response, which all animals have, us included. But there's so many degrees within that in terms of people deal with it. And some people just need a bit of space and time and a little bit of thinking space. Some people are very quick at making decisions, and other people just need to retreat off and have a bit of time. And I think that's a wonderful idea. I suppose the only thing it would be nice if they told their loved ones that they have gone away for this spaceship holiday, rather than them thinking something else awful has happened. But again, you know, we've got to get into the stage of we are moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. It's a huge, huge energetic shift anyway. It's a huge spiritual shift. And so if we really believe that's happening, we're going to see things happening in ways that we've never even imagined. And for me, I think that's really, really exciting, because we need it. I can't bear to see another person have to go through traditional cancer treatment, knowing that there's all these other therapies and remedies out there that are being banned and suppressed. It's just absolutely heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching to see the healers now, and whether you're calling it a doctor or a holistic healer or whatever you want to call them, there's so much out there at the moment that we can do now that's being completely suppressed, and they're literally throwing people into jail and taking their licenses away just for trying to help people. So I think actually we need some intervention. It's a bit like, you know, you've got a load of children and sometimes you need a teacher to come in and say, right, now come on, reset, calm it down.
Right.
Anything like that, and I think we need it. I think it would be a real positive.
If we ask for it, like collectively, and the reason I say that here too, and somebody said on the screen, yes, and I agree with Megan too. I don't think anybody's going to be left behind. I do believe that some souls have chosen to depart, and that's okay. That's their soul decision to make. So that's a completely different scenario. But in terms of ascension, I'm also on that point. I think we're all in this together, and I agree with both Catherine Humphreys there and Megan Rose on that one. Now, as it pertains to having help, outside help, that brings up a whole tricky question here. Let me bring up this last interview. This, I believe, is circa 2012 or 13, I forget, but it was Dr. Stephen Greer being interviewed by Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot. And this episode was really, really heated because at that point, Stephen Greer's opinion was that there was no such thing as a bad ET. They were all love and light, trust everybody. And of course, Carrie was going ballistic. How can you even say that responsibly? Come on, as above, so below. It's not because you're in the 4D or 5D that you're enlightened. They might have different agendas. It's complicated. It's never black and white. Come on. So this was a fabulous episode. If you can still see that, go check it out. But it brings us to the point here of discernment again, and what Catherine was just talking about earlier, the observational dilemma. We all need to grow up and use these skills. And up until the point where we are confronted with the reality, not just we think so, we might have seen a craft, I heard somebody else say there might be ETs, but really the knowing that we're not alone, up until that point, none of us have developed the skills to look at what's in front of us, who's in front of us, what type of being is in front of us, and to discern whether they are for our highest interest or not. We just haven't had the skill set developed yet. So we're all going to have to go through boot camp to learn that skill. Now, it's not to say that all the ETs are bad. That's not what I'm saying. But what if Carrie Cassidy and others are saying, hey, hold on a second here. There might be some issues out there, and that's probably why we have Solar Warden, because we had other people, you know, maybe abducting humans and doing mad things to humans. And this was also covered in my interview here with Penny Kelly. Then we need to use discernment there. So when people are saying, hey, the ETs will come and they'll save us all, okay, hold on a second here. Don't be the first one to jump on the ship. You really need to look at what you're and understand what you're looking at here before you make that decision. What's your take on this observational dilemma and the fact that humans, up until the point that we know for sure we're not alone, have not yet been able to master that skill of determining who we're dealing with and whether or not they are for our highest intention?
I think as a race and as individuals, we've all gone through life being quite used to people making decisions for us. I mean, anyone who's gone through the schooling system will know that, or being part of a sports club or something like that. I think what worries me about that is I think the people that are going to need to be taken off to allow some time to adjust are going to be the ones that actually probably have the least confidence in their discernment skills. So that would be a real concern in terms of who was making that decision for them. But so if you look at the way most of our Western societies run, most people are very happy having decisions made for them. And then some of us really are not. And, you know, you can't have it both ways, can you? You can't, if you're the type of personality that wants to, you know, to have someone else look after you, it's a very, very tricky one. But you've either got to step up to the mark and just say, right, I'm really taking control of my own life. Or if you surrender, as a lot of people have at the moment, to the current situations, or in the future, then, you know, you are taking a huge chance and a huge risk of face. It's not served us very well so far, has it? Let's put it, as a society, as a race.
But to be fair, those people who are making those choices, in some cases, yes, they've been duped, they've been brainwashed, they've been scared into doing it. So let's take those people out of the equation. But for the others who ultimately deep down made that choice, it is very possible that that was their soul mission to begin with. They were here to experience that 3D, and once that experience is over, they might return to do that or do other things in their soul growth path. And we cannot interfere with whatever it is their soul path was to begin with. So and that's why also the question of ET is becoming very complicated, because some ETs might say, well, okay, do we help just the ones that were brainwashed and got confused? Do we also help the ones who made that choice because that was their soul contract and their soul mission to experience that as a part of a learning experience for their overall infinite lifetime of souls, right? It gets a little bit murky there. And for us humans too, it gets murky because we kind of have to step back and say, wait a second, I can't judge my neighbor. I can't judge my kids. I can't judge my family. We're all on a different contract. I have mine, you have yours, right? What do you think about that?
I think, for one, we do judge. As a human race, we do judge. It's part of our personality. And secondly, I don't think we have to worry about any of this, because it's a lot of headspace. It's interesting to discuss it, but at the end of the day, those individual decisions are not going to be down to us. We're only going to be able to make the decision that relates to us. And as you just said, we're not even going to be able to make the decision that relates to our children or our loved ones, right, because they are their own individual soul. So even though it's a fascinating discussion, I don't think it's something we should worry about, because I think it's slipping into the trap again. I think having an awareness that it might be coming, I mean, again, everyone looks at that differently. To me, I think that sounds really exciting. Someone else might find it really scary, because we're looking at it from different perspectives.
But where's the trap? I'm trying to track with you here. I thought I was saying that to get out of the trap of being judgmental or being ashamed that you weren't able to help them see the light and all that. When you say, hey, your soul contract is yours, mine is mine, then suddenly you remove out of the trap. Maybe I'm not understanding this well, or it's lost in translation. Explain to me.
I think that's the dilemma that we've all been in, and that has really come to the forefront for the last a year and a half. Because in one respect, again, you had this conversation with Cliff yesterday, and he's sort of saying, what can you do? You can absolutely stand up and warn people of what you think, but you cannot be responsible for whether they listen, because also they've got to decide whether you're worth listening to. Right. We know that even of the people that are speaking up, there's a lot of different opinions flying around in terms of what people think has happened, what state people are in. I mean, Cliff mentioned some people yesterday that are sort of saying certain things have happened and he doesn't believe. And at the end of the day, we can all listen to all the information, and then we have to decide what resonates with us. I find it really difficult, because as a parent, part of the role of a parent, you're making decisions from the moment your children are conceived, not even from when they're born. You're deciding what you're going to eat throughout pregnancy, how you're going to behave, how stressed you are. And then from once they're born, it steps up even more. And so everything, every parent in nature, it doesn't matter whether you're a lioness or whether you're a human, you take on a certain responsibility until the stage when they fly the nest, and then you've done your job, and then it's up to them. Right. So we're always going to have that dilemma where how much do we step in and try to influence, and how much do we just let people do their own direction? And I just think it's a fine balance, and it's a constant learning process. The very fact that we're having this discussion today, people can choose to listen to it, or they can not even know it exists. People, when you're ready, I do believe that when you're ready to hear the message, you'll find it.
Right. In the meantime, there's plenty of TikTok videos with cute cats, doing cool things. You don't have to watch cats.
I'm too old.
Right, me too. Libby says, I'm totally excited and optimistic. So am I. I'm looking at all of this. Man, we chose to be here for this crazy tipping point in human history. Whether it's 3 days, 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, 70 years for some of us. I know there's some older people in the show watching this. I'm like, I've been waiting, Jean-Claude. I don't know. But 70 years is nothing. You're an eternal soul. You're just temporarily, very temporarily living in this meat suit here for a very small experience of it. But we're here at this fascinating window and juncture in time for humanity. And I'm with Libby, and I'm with everybody else in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us, being part of this collective, sharing this energy, holding this light, holding the line for everybody else here as we go through these crazy times. Catherine, that hour went by so fast. Oh my God. Every time you're on. What's that?
Well, I was going to say, it's just so lovely to have people joining us live. Jean-Claude's actually dragged me kicking and screaming into technology that I'm scared of to try. So thank you so much for that. But having the interaction from the people live, it is such a different energy, and it's so important. And it does make you realize just how many people are really actively creating this new reality. And I find that so exciting.
Oh, me too. Once I discovered that I can do these lives and to share this information and bring it brought the show to a whole other level. It's like, it's one thing. It's okay, Catherine, don't get me wrong. It's absolutely fabulous. I could talk to you all day long over the phone, but having this conversation here with everyone, not just the people live, I'll tell you, even the people watching in replay tomorrow, their field is already here in this show with everyone. We're all connected. And it's an amazing experience. And sometimes I wonder if that's why we have so much trouble, because they're trying to disband a lot of these star seeds, light worker, light warriors that are connecting through these types of chat, because together, when we come together, we're very powerful. And speaking of being very powerful, I really encourage you guys to hold that frequency, stay out of that fear frequency, stay into that self-knowing, be compassionate for your brothers, sisters, your families, your neighbors. They're going through a hell of a learning curve. You've gone through it maybe in a longer time span. They have to go through it now in a very, very short time. So be compassionate with them. They're in for a rude awakening. It's just around the corner now. So please join Catherine and I in extending that hand to all of those people who are just now waking up. So before we go, Catherine, how can people support you right now? Tell us a little bit about some of the services that you're offering on CatherineEdwardsAcademy.com.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've got two websites. I've got the CatherineEdwardsAcademy.com, which is where I offer my online courses. And I've just launched a new one for dog owners about how to home prepare the best quality. It's that one there with the vet in the middle. So I offer a series of online courses. We've got lots more exciting ones coming. And I do also do individual one-to-one consults, although I must warn they are booked up at least a month in advance, often longer. And then I have a second website, which is CatherineEdwards.life, which is my new one, which is where all my videos and my uncensored videos are. And I share health products that I support, because one thing is so important at this time is that we look after our physical bodies. I know this is really important to you as well, but we are going to need a lot of energy to support what's going to be coming over the next few months, and to support other people. So the better shape you're in terms of physically, emotionally, spiritually, the more support. So this is my second one. So on the Catherine Edwards Academy, please do take a look. If there's any courses that resonate with you, please do support me by buying those. As I said, you can sign up for consults as well. And on the
Do you by any chance have a coupon code? I forgot to ask you before the show. Is there a coupon code for the audience or anything?
Yes, I will put that on straight away afterwards, and that will be JC10.
JC10.
So JC10, capital J, capital C for Jean-Claude 10, and that will get you 10% off absolutely anything off the site. So I will add that as soon as we've finished. And then on the CatherineEdwards.life, I do a lot of work with rescue animals. I have my own little mini animal sanctuary here. And I also do a lot of work with the elephants in the sanctuary in Zambia, amongst other things. So there is a PayPal link there if anyone so feels called, because all that money goes directly to the animal work that I do.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. And yes, perhaps for our next show, we can concentrate on this too, because as I was telling you, I also want to create a new YouTube channel that concentrates a lot more on, I think I'm going to call it something like Beyond Fitness, but I want to talk about martial arts, nutrition, and travel. So I'm going to connect all of those things together in some way here too, because I also believe that the body, the vessel right now is very important. And in fact, Cliff High was talking about that in the show yesterday too. And if you listen to Alison Coe and what those ETs were saying, the body needs addressing right now because there's so many energies coming in. And for you to be able to hold that energy, not only hold it, but to be able to transmute that into this new earth that we're moving into, you need to start taking a little bit better care of your body. So as Cliff was saying, at this point, it might be healthier to have a Humvee as opposed to a 1972 Lada, you know, having trouble creeping up the hill here or slugging through all of this mud that we're in now. But better days are ahead of us. And I agree. A few people in the chat were saying, yes, the best is yet to come. I absolutely agree with that. All right. So thank you so much, folks. So please remember here, if you want to take any of the courses here on the Catherine Edwards website, the coupon code is JC10 in high caps. I will also put that here in the description box below for you guys. And finally, you can go and subscribe also here to our YouTube channel at Catherine Edwards. And if you're watching on Catherine Edwards' channel, please come over to mine here at Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic 3. 3 times a charm. Hopefully this one will stick for a little bit while longer. And coming up on Tuesday, Bruce Cesal is coming back to the show. He's taking amazing photography of the moon and low Earth orbit, and the things he's picking up is absolutely crazy. And of course, it ties into everything we're talking about now. We're seeing the results here in physicality as well. And don't forget, on Wednesday night, every Wednesday at 8 p.m., of course, our friend Janine will be back for a Tarot by Janine episode. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here on Sunday. This was the first of many episodes of World of Enchantment with Catherine Edwards. Merci beaucoup, Kathy, and merci beaucoup, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.